Hello friends, I just wanted to analyze your new paper format, and based on the marking scheme which you gave me, we know that there are going to be 4 1-mark questions, 8 2-mark questions, 11 4-mark questions, and 6 6-mark questions. So these are the numbers which I've shown here, and these are the marks. This box. Based on the marking scheme, we have the following chapters: sets, relations, functions, trigonometry, PMI, complex numbers, permutations, combinations, linear inequalities, binomial theorem, sequences and series, straight lines, and 3D geometry. So this is a marking scheme. From sets, 12 marks. So 12 marks could be one 6-mark question, one 4-mark question, and a 2-mark question. So that makes it 12. Relations, functions, 5 marks. So 5 could only be a 4-mark question and a 1-mark question. Trigonometry, you can expect one 6-mark, one 4-mark. PMI, one 4-mark question. Complex numbers, total is 11, so 6 plus 4 plus 1. Permutations, combinations, one 4-mark question and two 2-mark questions. Linear inequalities, there is only one 4-mark question. And binomial theorem, 6 plus 4. And the sequence and series, 13 marks. So you would expect one of each, one 6, one 4, one 2-mark, and one 1-mark question. And straight lines, 15 marks total. That is the highest allotted, straight lines. Straight line sequence series is where the main focus should be. And 3D geometry, of course, is 8 marks. Let me show it here. I'm not written it here. 8 marks. So this is the marking scheme. So we should be focusing on this area. This is where the main area is. So that constitutes more than 50% of the marks. Now, based on this marking scheme, based on the 6 marks, let us focus on what are the important types of questions. So in sets, we have a 6-mark question, and I would expect a very important question would be the example 34 on page 25. That's a typical 3 circles question, and where we have to use the formula, as well as the last 2 questions 15 and 16 from the miscellaneous exercise on page 27. So one 6-mark question would surely be, we would expect from that, and the 4-mark question could probably be to just find A union B, B union C, or something like that. And a 1-mark question could be anything, maybe finding the complement of an event. And relations and functions, I would expect the 4-mark question to be from the miscellaneous exercise. I would expect the 8th question from page 46, 8th question. All these in fact are important questions, and the 1-mark question could be probably domain and range question. That is the 4th question from the relations and functions chapter, 4th question on page 46. These are some of the areas which we can expect questions. And domain and range, of course, we would expect even the 2nd question from exercise 2.3. Trigonometry, we would expect the standard questions. In trigonometry, I would expect converting product to sum and sum to product type of questions, componendo dividendo questions, as well as a typical solving. 4 marks will be the solving of equations. This is what I would expect. PMI would be, I would expect a question on divisibility or a typical inequality question. And complex numbers, polar form, we would expect. Then the alpha beta question. The alpha beta question, I would say something like on page 113, question number 17, and those are, and then the questions which we did in which we have to take the conjugate and then take the product, or even the 16th question on page 113. Of course, polar form is surely expected. These are the things I would expect in complex numbers. In permutations, combinations, we would expect typical arrangement, vowels arrangement. Vowels are all together, vowels are separated, men and boys and girls being seated. The at least question, at least question, at least two are men, at least two are boys, those type of questions I would expect. And then a question on arrangement in which a word will be given and they will ask us to find the rank of the word. These are the expected questions. Linear inequalities, of course, we would expect a graph question, a simple graph, the last three questions from that exercise, either that or I would probably put on the acid question. There is one acid question which we did in class, just go over that. Binomial theorem, of course, it's supposed to beaten down question this, so I would expect example 11 on page 172 and question number 8 on page 175, the miscellaneous. These are some of the very typical questions, and of course we have done the ratio question, also solve example 16 on page 174. Sequences and series, we would expect page 185, question number 16. That's a typical 6-mark question. These are the 6-mark questions. Then the 4-mark question would be something like that, 7 plus 77 plus all those questions I would expect. And solved examples 21, 22, 23, 24. These are very, very important on page 198. Of course, miscellaneous exercise. There are many questions, all of which have been solved in the class. Question number 18 in that componendo dividendo question. Try to solve that. Straight lines, try to do it in a conceptual way rather than remembering a few questions here and there. I would expect the image question to come. Then the question numbers 16, question number 16 on page 228. 228, that is the typical p square plus 4q square is equal to k square. That question I would expect. I would also expect solved examples 23, 24 on page 231. These are typical 6-mark questions which will fit in. And the 4-mark questions, I would expect the 7th question from 233, page 233. And of course solving for P and all that what we did in class. I would also expect the 6-mark question 23 on page, the miscellaneous exercise, page 234. Page 234, question number 23. That's also, please go over that also. 3D geometry, pretty straightforward. I would expect 3D geometry, the same ratio question to come. That is, in what ratio the XY plane is dividing a line joining, that the typical question which we did in class. That is question number 3 from page 277. Or they will ask you a locus question in which you have to find the locus of a point or the equation of a point. That is miscellaneous exercise question 6, page 279. So these are some of the predicted questions. Of course, these are only shortcuts. There is no, you have to study everything what has been done in the class. Please don't go only on these. Keep these only as guidelines for learning. All right. Good luck. Thank you.